Hi everyone, it's Alyssa and this is Always Cinema Chic, the place that encourages you to go out, get dressed up, and watch a movie. So today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to give my analysis for Blade Runner 2049. I've seen the film twice so far. When I saw it the first time, I just was so blown away. I felt like there was so much to unpack, and so I want to kind of go over what my thoughts are and have kind of discussion, and hopefully people will leave a ton of comments so that we can talk about the movie because I just loved it so much. But that brings me to the point that there are going to be a ton of spoilers in this. So if you haven't seen the film, please don't watch this. Go watch the movie and then watch this. If you want to see a review with no spoilers, I'll link it right above. It really is such a spectacular film and you want to see this in the movie theater for sure. The other thing I want to say is that because I wrote so much, I'm going to put this into two parts, because this video will turn into something that is at least half an hour, and I don't think anyone wants to sit and watch that all at once. So I'm going to break it up into two parts. So starting the analysis, the thing that I loved about Blade Runner 2049 is that it is so different from other science fiction. Usually we think of science fiction and we think of the one, right? That one person who starts out as a normal human being and finds out that they are special and they are meant to help all of mankind. So I'm thinking of Terminator, The Matrix, Star Wars. All of these films had that same kind of notion and ideal, but Blade Runner 2049 just takes that notion and flips it on its head, because you have K, someone that thinks that he is special, that he's different, that he is born from replicants rather than manufactured, and in the end he finds out that he's not special in any way, but yet he still goes and fights and he makes that choice for himself. So I find that he is almost more of a hero than some of these other science fiction films, because there is nothing that is that special about him in the first place, but because he believes in the cause, he is willing to fight and presumably die. I just don't want to believe he's actually dead, but he fights for something that he believes in, and that's something that is kind of different for science fiction, and it's what I loved most about the film. And I feel like this really is a commentary for our times. So right now we live in a world that, to me at least, is really horrific, and you turn on the news and it's a natural disaster or there is some kind of shooting. There is something always where you just constantly feel like what's going on right now. And so we look to movies and we look to superheroes, I think, to kind of fill that void, saying like, well, what can I do? I don't know. So at least there's Superman or Batman and they can save everything. And what I love is this film kind of claims the opposite. It claims that we should be the ones to take action and really believe in something, even if we aren't, the one. So I thought this was a really different approach to the film, and I loved it so much. And I also noticed that early on in the film, there are notions that K is not always the good boy that he is supposed to be. So take, for instance, the moments after he's killed Sapper and Lieutenant Joshi calls and tells him that he should go back to the station. Now instead, he disobeys and leaves the car to look at the dead tree because something is drawing him to it. It's here that he reveals the date 6/10/21. Now this is the first moment that we realize that Kay actually might have some kind of free will. And what's more is, in the scene previously when he goes to kill Sapper, he doesn't just go in there and kill him, which you would think he'd be programmed to do. Instead, he starts talking to him and asking him questions about his life and looking into his past and talking about even the farming and how he sustains life. Now, I personally didn't think that the Wallace Corporation would program him to be curious and inquisitive about life. He even says that he wishes that he wasn't the Blade Runner that had to kill him, because he's so kind of intrigued and maybe even looks up to him, but he feels like he's not able to break that code yet. at this point. Now, some say that it doesn't make sense that K starts to obey when his sole reason for creation is to obey. Yet, to me, it makes more sense that he is able to lie and disobey once he believes that the memory he has about the horse is indeed a real memory. This moment opens up his inquisitive nature and his journey towards self-awareness. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it was his authentic memory, which it wasn't. All that matters to him is that it was a replicant's true experience, and that gives him the belief that he can be something more. And this realization helps him to unlock his mind and free it from his programmed need to obey. I'm sure we've all had that moment where we question the rules of society and why we behave the way that we do, and why we kind of operate in the sort of routine in the way that we do, and that sometimes we've been taught ever since we were little kids to be good little soldiers and just follow the rules and not necessarily question anything. But once you unlock that part of your brain and you think about what is the greater purpose of human beings and what is the greater purpose of myself, well, there's not really any going back to that robotic way of thinking where you just have the same exact routine every single day. You're never going to go back. And the same thing is true with Kay. Once he unlocks that part of his mind, there's no way that he can go back. And this is how Kay becomes Joe, the everyman who, even though he may not be the one, he still is going to fight and be part of the change and action to rid the replicants of slavery, because now he's seen the bigger picture and he truly understands it. And this could be stretching it, saying that we are all meant to represent Kay and that really we all want to strive to become Joe. But at the same time, there are so many critics that said the 1982 version of Blade Runner really was all a result of the greed that was coming out in the 80s, and that this film was trying to combat that. So I have to believe that this film came out right now at this certain time for a certain reason, for a certain purpose. So as the creator, Neander Wallace is narcissistic enough to believe that he will always be able to control his creation. Wallace is not even able to fully control love, and she is hardly ever out of his sight or care. I will more fully explain who I think love represents later in the analysis. Therefore, he cannot control the minds of the millions of replicants once they are exposed to specific human experiences. True, if the replicants only went about their day and obeyed in every way they were meant to, then they will never evolve. But once Kay is presented with an anomaly, the fact that his memories may actually be real, he goes down a path that he was not programmed for, and once he begins his journey, there is no going back. Kay's world is rocked to his core once he realizes that he could actually be a miracle next generation in replicants, and this really affects his identity and his sense of self. Before, he didn't really care that he was despised by the rest of the world. He just had his routine as a Blade Runner and that was it. But now that identity has been yanked from under him and he doesn't really know what to do, so all he can do is further go on this quest to see if he indeed is who he thinks he is. And he wouldn't be able to do that without Joy, his virtual companion. So every time he clicks that button and he hears that Peter and the Wolf music come on, you get this optimistic kind of person who pushes him along the entire journey. And this is just a side note. I looked up Peter and the Wolf and what that story is all about, and I really think that you can fit a lot of the characters from the story into the story of Peter and the Wolf. So I think that Joy represents Peter, who's super optimistic. I think the replicants would be the duck. I think humans represent the bird. I think that there's a cat, and I think that could be love, and a wolf, who I think is Wallace, and the grandfather, who I believe represents God. But that's just a side note. I'm totally digressing, and I got obsessed and started listening to that too, but I think that could be a part of it as well. So Joy really represents, even though she's a hologram, she is this person who gives him humanity and life and continues to push him on this journey. Now you have to ask yourself, is she exactly who she thinks she is? Because her whole programming is to make you hear whatever it is that you want to hear. So when Joy tells him, all of these great motivational things, is that joy, or is that really what Kay wants to hear? So in a sense, I think joy represents Kay's subconscious and who he always wanted to be. Kay needed to believe that he was something more. In fact, he's always needed to hear that, because even before he begins to believe that he is Rachel's son, Joy has always told him that he was special, thus showing how we all want to believe that we're different or special in some way. What makes Kay and us special is that selflessness and participation in a purpose that we believe in, while still not giving up on our own individuality. The relationship that Kay develops with Joy is what allows him to see the bigger picture. And when Joy is murdered, that kind of unleashes emotions that he's never had before, like loss and hurt. And as a result of all of this pain that he's feeling, he truly gains his humanity. And this is where he really becomes Joe. And while it's true at first he's not really sure if he wants to be part of the rebellion, he joins because of the love that he felt for Joy, and he now wants that same sense of love between Deckard and his daughter Anna, and that is really the motivation that he needs in order to achieve that end goal of reunited Deckard and Anna. I loved the moment in the film where Kay is beaten and walking down the rainy streets of the city, only to come across a gigantic hologram of Joy on a building where she now has blue hair and an American accent. When she walks over to him, she calls him Joe. And this is the moment in which the character truly embodies the idea of being human, and he allows himself to have a name. He could have taken the easy way out. Maybe he could have even bought another Joy, but she just wouldn't have been the same. He realizes that even though he is not the one, he can take action and become part of this movement. And in a way, this makes him a greater hero than simply being born into a position of power. Joe gains free will and makes the choice to help Deckard. The lack of nature also plays such a huge role in the film. So Kay has that kind of inherent connection to the dead tree, the really small little wooden horse toy that is worth a fortune because it's actually made of wood. But what I think is most important is the first image that we get of Anna, because there we see her within nature, albeit a fake nature, but it's the only time that we see that natural color green of the trees and the grass, and this kind of shows us that that character really was very important. We are told that she has Galatian's disease, and this affects her immune system, which is why she cannot leave the laboratory. So when I looked up the book of Galatian, I found that book 4, passage 1 states, "But what I would say is this, that so long as the heir is an infant, he differeth nothing from a slave, though he is Lord of all." So if you were extremely well versed in the Bible, you would know from this scene that Anna is the child. She'll end up being the Lord of the slaves. The name Anna literally means grace or favor, and she is in the grace of God, being that she is the first replicant to be born by replicants. And this is why she freelances memories for the Wallace Corporation, because she, quote unquote, takes her freedom where she can get it. Now here's where I might be stretching it. I think that Kay is actually getting Anna's memories because he is the identical genetic copy that we hear about from the beginning of the film. So in that scene with Kay and Anna, when he asks her, "Do you ever use your own memories to implant into replicants?" she says no, and she says it's illegal. So I think when she sees what is essentially her memory, she starts crying, but she doesn't know how that memory got into his head. She's just crying because that is her own genuine memory, and she's experiencing it through Kay. So I think that Kay was created by the replicants as a diversion from Anna. I think that the replicants created Kay as the identical genetic makeup of Anna just to throw authorities off of her tracks. So this is why he has the same memory as Anna, because they have a sort of twin psychic bond between the two. In essence, he is the copy of a natural born replicant, which I think makes Kay a rather important replicant because he too does not come from the Wallace Corporation. So one plot point that really threw me for a loop was Mariette, played by Mackenzie Davis. I really thought that she was going to be the one because of the scene where Mariette comes into Kay's apartment. So you see in an earlier scene that in order to get into that apartment, Kay has to put his hand on this pad and his fingerprints are what unlocks the door. And so then when we see Mariette come in and she had to use the fingerprints to get into the door, I thought that showed that she had the exact same genetic makeup. Now, I guess it could be possible that Joy just unlocks the door and that she has access to that, but I don't know, it still sort of bothers me because I felt like that was a little bit unanswered, how she was able to just get into the apartment like that. But that takes me to the whole memory with the horse that Kay has, and here I think there is a real connection to the original. So in the original, Deckard has the dream about the unicorn, and when we see Gaff leave him the origami unicorn at the end of the film, we can safely say, or at least I can safely say, that Deckard is indeed a replicant. Unicorns are mythical creatures. They do not really exist. And in the first film, the replicants are represented by the unicorn because they are not natural. But in 2049, the unicorn becomes the natural horse. And replicants are no longer unnatural because they can be born. The toy horse is made of natural wood and represents the natural evolution of the replicants. So originally you would think, or Kay thinks, that he is that natural horse, but in the end we find out that it really is Anna. And that's where I'm going to end the part one of this analysis with this video. Next time I'm really going to look at the water symbolism, the eye symbolism, look at the meaning of some of the names, and talk about the colors, what I think the orange and blue color palette actually represents. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope that this sparks a conversation and we can all kind of talk about the meaning of the film, because I just don't ever want to stop talking about it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and remember, it is always in fashion to go out, get dressed up, and make it a cinema chic night. Thank you guys so much. Bye.